We are now recording. I think just a little bit of a sound check before we start. Brittany, can you still hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And how about Brian? Brian Martes, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
All right, perfect. I just wanted to do a little bit of a sound check, so I think we are good to go. And we are testing a new technology tonight, and Amy will call us to order, and we'll see how this works.
Yeah, our new OWL technology. It's pretty cool. So I welcome everyone this evening to the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union School Board. We meet on the fourth Monday of every month at 6:30, and today is our regular meeting. And are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Hearing none.
Wait, okay.
I put it up there just so people can see it. People in our viewing audience can't see it, but everybody here can see it.
Next, I will take a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
So moved.
And that was Nancy? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Scott?
Scott. Okay. I only noticed one, and I kind of made a note reviewing portions, and Scott likes that it's policies, reviewing policies every other month.
What number is that?
That is board goals, number 6B.
6B.
Yeah.
Got it.
Does that make sense, everyone? My brain automatically went to Harry Potter, and it was reviewing potions, and I thought, well, that would be cool, but I knew that wasn't the case. So
I think it came down to just making a statement that we would regularly look at the policy, and be working on the updating all the time.
make sure that if there are other topics covered by a policy, that that the policy is being implemented as we had originally intended. And I see that, Nikki, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just while we're going through the minutes, this is the one that I was really late for, so while I kind of came to the meeting, I'm not gonna vote. I'm gonna abstain from voting.
Are there any other changes or clarifications? Hearing and seeing none. All those in
Yeah, just turn your mic off.
You also have to mute your computer.
Yeah, that's good.
all those in favor of approving the minutes with the one correction, say aye.
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 Opposed? Your hand is raised.
Wrong button.
Okay, great. So the minutes have been approved as corrected. Next, we have public participation on items not related to the agenda or announcements from board members. Are there any, do we have public Ewing. Okay.
Is that your new principal?
Brian?
Do you want to introduce him?
Yeah, I guess I
Yeah, that would be a good idea. I was gonna do it under my report, but why don't you go ahead, Anne Marie? That would be great.
Weathersfield's new principal started on July 1st. His name is Brian Martez, and he's here if he wants to say a few words. Put you on the spot, Brian.
Sorry, I'm listening and painting at the same time, so I'm trying to multitask, which I don't do very well. But thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here and be part of the Weathersfield family and part of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union. So thank you very much for this opportunity. There we go. I'm a little bit better now. So sorry, I'm a little bit of a mess. It's gray hair, but it's also white paint in there, so it's a mixture. But I am here and I'm ready to go and trying to multitask as I do two things. So I'm going to turn my camera off because I don't look the best today, and I'm a little sweaty too. So.
Right.
Welcome to Windsor Southeast Supervisor, and welcome to Weathersfield. And Elizabeth, your hand is raised.
Mike, I just have a quick question. Brian, would you mind just telling us how to correctly pronounce your surname?
It's Martis. It's just like Tuesday in Spanish. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Are there any other announcements? Hearing none, we will move to the superintendent's report. David.
Yeah, I have a few items underneath my report that we can talk about. And I would probably go to new hires first, just because that's the first one on there. And I don't know, Katie, did you have an update on hires? Most of them would all be, I think, supervisory union at this point.
Right, not since our last
Okay.
meeting for any professional certified staff new hires.
Yeah.
Still looking.
Yeah, I think we put that on just to be safe. So, but we do have some folks we are still looking for, without a doubt. Update on the equity work. We've had a bit of a break from the task force because we're all working on a pretty complex homework assignment right now that was given out by our consultant, Melissa Crum. Small groups are meeting to basically take different sections of the anti-racism policy and unpack it a bit, looking at the terms and definitions, trying to make sure we understand the words that are in there. And then what are the implications for future work based on that policy? And I know my small group met the other day. That was Vicky Buck, Rebecca Roisman, Angie Ledoux, and who else was with us, Angie? That was a good group, and we had a great, rich discussion. So, and then we're meeting again, at least tentatively, on August 18th, and I sent out an email today because Heather Pogue, thank you, Heather. Thank you. Whoever gave me that other name, thanks.
Me.
Okay, good. Oh, okay, good, but it's coming from there, so that's, I gotta get used to that, right? I heard it out of there. Yeah, but anyhow, I think our next meeting is really, the real task is going to be to talk about next steps now that we have a better understanding of that policy and the equity and anti-racism. I know there is some strong feeling on the part of the administrative team. If anybody wants to speak to it, they certainly can, that we stay with Melissa for a little while and have her help us better understand a good job description for an equity coordinator, and also to kind of map out those next steps and some of the staff development work that needs to happen. We think that Melissa could be an excellent person for professional development, essentially, with our staff. And then,
Wait,
did anybody have any questions about that?
I have a question.
Hand is raised.
Can you tell us about where you are in the search or job development description for an equity coordinator, or is that coming after all of this, or? It sure would be nice to start the year at least with some of that, start the school year.
You know, I think that, and I think probably we have to have this conversation, and this might be the board to, this probably is the board to have that conversation, because there's, because I know, Elizabeth, you've been strong on getting this equity coordinator on board. The administrative team right now thinks it's too early, that we just need a little bit more work, a little bit more professional development, a little more unpacking the policy, a little bit more staff development, before we hire an equity coordinator. It's in the budget, but I mean, right now, we're just feeling it's a little bit too soon to do that. And so the idea is that this would come after the work. Now, whether that could happen, you know, in the fall, or whether it could happen in the winter. And again, we had our administrative retreat and we talked a lot about this, and the idea was folks felt like it was just a little bit too soon to do that.
Well, apart from hiring somebody, did you talk about what would, at your administrative retreat, did you talk about what that person would be doing, or where they would be housed, or what level of responsibility they would have? Like, would they be at the top administrative level, or would they?
Right. I think that's why we don't feel we're ready, because we haven't, those are the kinds of questions we need to answer. And we don't, because this is all new work to us, I mean, there are certainly sample equity coordinator coordinator jobs that we could grab, but I think you've asked really the essential questions. What would they do? What would be their role? Where would they be located?
So when do you plan to discuss that?
I think we felt we needed to get through this work with Melissa, and then that's part of what we'd like her help with. One of the things we'd like her help with is sort of crafting that. What would that look like? What, again, what level would that person serve under? I think that's where we are right now. So I think we're waiting until after we're done with Melissa, and then seeing if she can help us put that position together. We've got the money. My understanding is the money is in the ESSER budget for the equity coordinator.
It's
Or
not
that
in the ESSER 2 budget.
Okay, all right.
And just to kind of interrupt here, but I think we need to have a clear idea of what the person is going to be doing before we hire. Otherwise,
Well, yeah,
we'll
but
be setting the
absolutely.
person up. We'll be setting the entire situation up to fail.
Agreed. However, if we don't talk about what the person is going to be doing, we'll never get to a point where we're ready to hire them. And so I just wondered when that conversation was going to begin. That's all.
No, I think the simple answer to that, Elizabeth, is once we finish with Elizabeth and the administrative team and maybe a small group of that task force.
With Melissa.
With Melissa, what did I say?
Elizabeth.
Well, I hope, well, maybe Elizabeth, you can correct, with Melissa, that she'd help us sort that out. That's the thought. I just want to.
You'll never be finished with me.
Well, I feel bad because you've really been strongly pushing for this, and I don't want to look like I'm blocking it, but I've got a whole administrative team that's saying we're not ready, yet for that. So I just want to wait till we're ready. And my understanding at our retreat was that they wanted to use Melissa as a consultant to kind of work through that piece and get us to that point. So maybe that's the simple answer.
Well, I guess, okay, let me rephrase. What would ready look like to your administration?
Yeah, I think some of the things you mentioned, I think it would be a thorough job description with duties and responsibilities. I think it would be, who are they reporting to?
I think a lot of that is actually in the procedures document. I mean,
Yes, and
it's not listed in the procedures
Right.
document, but it's in the procedures document.
Yeah, and we have not looked at the procedures document with Melissa, correct? I think we've only looked at the policy, not the procedures. Yeah. I mean, I guess the general thought, and maybe, again, if another administrator wants to speak to this, I mean, I don't want to be the voice of, there's no attempt to block this, and I know you're not saying that. It's just that we don't know what that person's role would be. We're not clear on that. We now, after this small group work, are really just coming to grips with some of these definitions, you know, and what would the title be? I guess, you know, what would the reporting mechanism be? Yeah, I mean, I just think we're not ready.
Can I speak? So one of my concerns is access to staff and how much that role would be working with staff. And we also wonder what the deliverable would be. What would be the outcome of that person's work with staff? And I'm thinking one of the things that we know we should do is a curriculum audit, which is going to require, I would think, all staff to participate in that. So what exactly does that look like? How much time would that be? Having an idea of that. I worry that if we put a person in a position that we don't have those answers to those questions, then we're creating a position in which they don't have any access to the staff with whom they have to work. And that, I mean, the good news is that we have our 45 minutes at the end of the day, but we've been very clear with our staff that that is mostly collaborative practices with occasional SU directed professional learning. But most of those times, yeah. So we've just been clear. They were very skeptical that we would actually not use up all that time with directed things for them to do, but it's really for them to do collaborative practices. So.
Yeah, I see Mark's hand up too,
Mark,
right?
your hand is raised.
And then I'll make one more comment.
You're muted, Mark.
Mark, you can unmute.
There he is. We heard you.
Okay, am I making more sense now? Okay, good. Sorry about that. No, one of the things that we were discussing in our small group work that really seems like it would be a hiccup as far as staffing this position right now is how does the entire system work? And one of the things that we were fumbling over was we've crafted this document as carefully as we possibly could. We've tried to keep it to intent. We've tried to leave as much for freedom of individuals crafting things and what's going to work for different schools and different situations. But one thing we couldn't answer in our small group was we've adopted this policy, and the only way that it's really going to have a large effect on our students is if that policy encompasses the entire school day. Every moment that they're on school property or on the property of a contractor that has been contracted with the SU. For instance, the busing environment, the coaching environment, it all has to essentially fall under the umbrella of the anti-racism policy. And when we were talking about structurally, what do we have to figure out in order to implement this policy? I couldn't answer that. For instance, if you have, I don't know, soccer coach O'Malley, who's got something, doesn't like the English. He's got something against Manchester. How does that fall into his coaching style? What if you've got a bus driver who's contracted in with a company and insists on celebrating his Southern heritage by flying the Confederate flag on the bus. And I just couldn't answer how any of these things work. So I'm not sure if there's anybody on the board who has dealt with any other kind of policy individual subcontractor issues before, or how that all shakes out. And if this is not the time to answer that, then some other time, please.
Thank you, Mark. Elizabeth, your hand is raised.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I think it's really crucial that our group also look equally at the procedures document, because it's actually, a lot of the stuff is outlined in it, and it helps us along. We did, in our small group, we did take a long look at the procedures document as well, and it sort of clarifies what some of those pieces mean. So do take that into account when you're, if you have another meeting with your small group, I don't know. But.
You know, what I was going to say, and our small group did not look specifically at the procedures. We really just focused on that section of policy. But what I wanted to say, and maybe this is similar to what Mark was trying to say, I'm not sure, but it's almost like the more we learn, the more we know what we didn't know. This is incredibly complex, and part of the complexity is going to be unpacked, I think needs to continue to be unpacked before we create a job description for an equity coordinator, hire an equity coordinator, I think, or manager or director or whatever the title might be. Because I think, and this is where the administrative team anyhow feels that, you know, Melissa has done an outstanding job. We have that last meeting in August, and then I think she's contracted for another 4 hours of consultancy time to sort of map out what some next steps might be, and whether, you know, and what her role might be in that. And I think that's what the administrative team wants to do, and that might be Elizabeth looking at those procedures and unpacking those procedures a little bit, and then seeing how that relates to staff development and the equity coordinator. I mean, it's just so complex. But I think the conversations will happen. I just reached out to her today to say, you have some time, because the administrative team is meeting next week. No, the week after next, right, on August 12th. So I asked her if she had an hour of time to meet with us on that day. And I would certainly not be opposed, if she does, to inviting the board chairs. I mean, I think it's important that we all be a part of this ongoing planning and development. Yeah. So I will keep you posted on that.
Nikki, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I have a fan on. I hope you guys can hear me. So I did just scan the procedures because it's been a long time since I looked at them. And I do kind of feel like they are a job description for an equity coordinator. To back up Elizabeth, I could totally see where the administrative team feels like we need to develop, and I can also see the push to hire somebody now. So I don't really have an opinion, but I do think that it would be highly valuable to go through the procedures with Elizabeth. David did that. To go through the procedures with Melissa and get that job description written. I think it's a path. These procedures are a good path forward. So I was just going to say that for those who haven't taken a look at them recently.
They,
And I have not
They're
looked
with
at
the
those.
policy.
I have
they're
not
not
looked at those
attached
either.
to the policy.
They're not attached to the
They're not on the
policy,
same page as the
No.
policy, but
because we always keep procedures separate from the policy.
Right.
yep, we did.
So,
I'll take a few minutes and send them right now.
all right, if you want to send them to all of us, that would be great. I'm sure we've got them, but they are not attached to the.
Are the ones that are that were sent to us originally a year ago. that have Hartford School District. That's all I can find. So David?
I know, I have
could
not looked at
continue-
them. Yeah.
Could you continue
Yeah,
with your
sure.
report? We
Yeah,
kind of got off.
No, that's okay. Well, no, I mean, I think those are really important questions around the equity coordinator, because we have to make that decision. But see, there's an example too, and I'm not trying to make light of this, but I mean, I don't think I've looked at those procedures, and I don't even know if we maybe we did attach procedures at some point. I remember a lot of discussion about the policy. I know we had some draft procedures from somewhere, but I think that's what we got to get clear on with Melissa and with, the administrative team and others.
Well, if you're gonna talk with her tomorrow, you might wanna
Yeah.
forward the procedures.
Yeah, I will. And Nikki's digging them out for us, or scanning them and sending them to us. So that'll be great. So ESSER funding update.
Wait for a second. I'm just going to assume that these haven't been edited because I have no other procedures in my email. So I'm going to create a Word document of just procedures and move forward with that. Okay.
Okay, that's good. But Nikki, that does not look like a document we have worked on as a supervisory union, or does it?
I don't have any other drafts of it in my inbox, and I think I would if we'd worked on it as a supervisory union. So that's what I'm going with.
Okay, so to move along, ESSER funding update. And I hope certainly Angie, you can add to this as well. I don't know
Brittany's here to.
and Brittany is
speak
here
to it too,
as well. Brittany's
about
on.
recovery.
So we did send out a survey because ESSER 3 monies, which is the largest part of money that we're going to disseminate. The survey basically asked for some stakeholder input. We've talked about that before. Summertime is a tough time to have forums or get people together. We may be able to do some of that, in the early stages of September, but not right now. So I don't know if Brittany and or Angie want to elaborate on where we are with the funding and the survey right now.
I will just elaborate that the Agency of Education, we are still waiting for guidance on as to exactly what we have to submit to access the ESSER 3 funding. It's called ARP ESSER, American Rescue Plan, I think, ESSER. And so we're not exactly sure. We are participating in meaningful consultation right now, and I will let Brittany talk more about that as the recovery coordinator.
Yes, so I met with a team, several of you were on it, or at least a couple of you, to talk about the best ways to get community input. That went really well, so we've been moving forward with that. I created the survey and it went out, now all the days run together in the summer, but it went out last week. And I think within the first day we had, 25, 30 plus responses, which was fantastic. I mean, even within the first couple hours, which was great. Now we're, about 4 or 5 business days in, and we have 148 responses and very good feedback. I was working today to try to come up with common themes with the data that we did have so far. And while I'm hoping to get more responses, and I do think we will, mental health obviously came up quite a bit as a need for a variety of reasons, different for different people. But, there were some creative ideas about how we can help support our students coming back, which is great. I'll create a kind of a question and answer for those who had post some questions about specific things, including some questions around programming. When you read the fact sheet that went out, it's got a lot of jargon in it, and if you don't work in schools, that can be really hard to decipher. So we'll work on clearing that up for people. And I do think moving forward with some sort of informational session, Q&A at maybe some back to school barbecues or some welcome back things at the individual schools will help. A little bit of a smaller and give people the freedom to speak. So that's the plan so far, but I was pretty happy with the responses we've gotten so far, and more surveys are going out. We've placed them at several different businesses in the area, some libraries, and we're still moving forward with that, as well as David's email blast that's gone out a couple of times as well. Does anybody have specific questions about the survey that I can answer?
Brittany, do we have a timeline, or Angie, as to when we need to submit?
Well, right now, the timeline that the Agency of Education is working with is August 23rd, which is 60 days after the release of the RPESR funds, which was May 24th. My dates might be slightly off, but toward the end of May. And we are, I believe they are submitting an extension of that, or getting more clarity on exactly what that means. The 60-day deadline is like then you have to submit your plan by August 23rd, but the Agency of Education is not thinking that we're going to have to submit a plan. Although we could come back from the Vermont Principals Association retreat next week and find out that indeed we have to submit some plan. They're doing their best to keep it in alignment with the work we've already done. So using the recovery plan, the processes that we've followed for ESSER 2, that all feeds into that in terms of the consultation that we have completed to date for that. Having our plans up on the website, places for people to make comment, that all is considered, it's considered feedback, not necessarily meaningful consultation. So.
Yeah. The other thing that we've been working on related to this is, and we spent a lot of time on our administrative retreat talking about this, is what will be the reporting mechanism in terms of outcomes. We've got a pretty significant recovery plan. We have some pretty significant monies that are being spent, including money that's being spent on the Summer Academy this summer, which Katie may talk about in a few minutes here. But one of the things in our strategic plan, our Portrait of a Graduate strategic plan, and in the recovery plan, are these regular intervals of reporting out, what's the data we're going to use and how do we report that out. So certainly not anything we're ready to present tonight, but I think by, I want to, and maybe not by August either, but I think by September we'll be able to come to the Supervisory Union Board and the individual boards and talk about how we're going to report out on that data. I think that's critical.
Brittany, your hand is raised.
I can say that Katie and I connected a little bit today, and we're going to be working on the summer data collection to make sure we have a very clear, not just what are the outcomes, but how many students qualified, how many students were invited, how many students actually attended, and just really drill down on that data. Now, the TMP data that we're going to have to compare, since that was the qualifying data, is they won't take that until I think it's October-ish. So we might have some data in terms of attendance and things like that, and then but the real at least for me, the real interesting data will be what are the outcomes, what did we see as a benefit, and was there any, hopefully we mitigated the loss of learning for the students that did attend.
And I don't know if there are any other questions on ESSER. I mean, this might be a good time for Katie to jump in and just give a quick little update on the Summer Academy. It's been, all of us have been over there several times. Katie's been over there an awful lot. Each administrator is taking a turn at sort of administering in that building, but it looks like a pretty robust program, and the kids seem to be doing a good job. But did you want to say something, Kate?
Yep, I have 4 slides to show. If I can present my
That's
screen. It
perfect.
shows up on yours.
I think it should come right up here.
This is the. I want to move my calendar. I need to go to FY. So I'll just do it this way. Go to,
You still have to go to present mode though, right?
yep, and I think it just did. It is not letting me present.
Would that be the owl, Larry, or
No,
no?
it's because you're the organizer, so you have to give.
Does she have to, do I have to give her permission to present? Or you could send it to me, Katie, and I could present.
I did share it with you just in case.
Probably not.
That's great permission.
You have to grant permission.
If you can
just
go,
open
yep,
it.
you just open it that way, it works. So,
Okay.
we have, I added a few pictures because it's been kind of fun getting pictures. I've been there every day. Colleen Deschamps and Kate Ryan and Christine Bourne, as well as the new assistant principal over at Heartland, Lindsay Perkins, have also been there during the days. So we have the average daily attendance for pre-K through 12 and the 12th grade. The high school program just ended last week. There's been about 113 students. This happens to be the kindergarten class did learning about their community, and they went to the fire station and walked there and walked back and had a grand time. You want to do the next? So we have, with those 113 students, Dr. Baker, if you click to the next slide.
Yeah. Well, that the people offsite are seeing this,
They aren't.
because I'm
Yeah, I
not.
don't think we can see it at all.
You have to present yours.
Yeah, let me go back to present. Oh,
It's a very nice picture, just for those of you who actually can see it. But consistently, where students are showing up every day. We've had lots of families with vacations and sort of doing the allowances for that, hit or miss. A couple students trying to convince parents that summer academy was over. That was a good chuckle. So we have a good sense of humor. Can you all see it now?
Yes.
So our numbers pre-K through 9 who are coming for the academy itself, the consistent students showing up every day. 8 students from Albert Bridge, 32 students from Heartland, which it seems like at least half of those are on the bus. Weathersfield, 20 students, and Windsor has 46. We did have some students who were enrolled at the beginning. You notice those numbers have shifted a little bit, who have not shown up, despite phone calls, emails, home visits, other things where it just didn't gel with folks. So this is one of the examples of our outdoor learning with students in the 4th, 5th grade. We're doing Fibonacci squares, where I have to get my notes on that. So multiplicative reasoning and spiraling math problems using both addition and multiplication for area and side lengths. So that was pretty cool. Kids, they really got into it outside. And that was one of the cooler days where they could all be out in the parking lot and not roast. The upper grades, the 9th through 12th, there's about approximately 24 students. It wasn't until after I was doing all the data that I realized there were duplicate students, so I went back and checked that. And that was for students looking at finishing their proficiencies at the high school level. So high school teachers were doing that, as well as special educators supporting those students. Some of them we transported as well. If they could catch a ride, we got them.
I've got a question. Of the pre-K, how does the pre-K population break down by town? Do you know?
Just thinking off the top of my head, there were only pre-KK were about 2 Albert Bridge students at the most, and the most of the rest of it is actually fairly equally split between Heartland, Weathersfield, and Windsor. If I'm remembering off the top of my head correctly, and those students are there the same amount of time as the rest of the kids, which for our pre-K program is a big change for the
Right.
summer. That is huge. It used to be just be 1 day a week, and now with the 5 days a week, it's been a big change for those little kids. So we really liked it. And we also, I should mention, have 2 volunteers, 1 high school student volunteer full-time, 2 days a week, and another middle school student from Windsor who is also volunteering, and they are coming as much as possible. So that's another impact on students, and we have a couple more if they come in as well. We could do the next one. We have just a little example of what we've done outside. The kindergarten class is counting outside. They had the stones, and there were all these mats all over the waterway where they were at. And one of the classrooms upstairs with the 6th through 9th graders has been exploring the African continent through art. So they have made sort of representations of things. And the latest were, I haven't heard the drums yet, but we've made them. But that was pretty, they were very much into that. High attendance in those upper grade classrooms too, which we've been really impressed. Middle schoolers are hard to catch, and we've had a good attendance there. And so just some highlights, all 4 schools were represented for staff as well as the SU. Students working together, it's been really kind of cool to watch students and staff who didn't know each other all come together and figure out things. It's been fairly hands-off for administration, taking care of things like there are no subs. So if you're out, their team figures it out. Kids are getting to know all the other kids and taking care of each other. We've really seen some of the older students step up and help out with the younger kids. The HCRS and We Are Hope are embedded in the classrooms. You would know one from the other. And at the end of the year, Patty Pomelo and Jennifer Duranzo talked to Craig and Rodney, and they have offered to do a barbecue at the Windsor Green on August 5th with everybody. So we're all gonna walk down and have a big barbecue at the end, which the kids are pretty excited about. Which is kind of nice, if you drive by the school between 9:30 and 10:30, all of the students are out there for recess. The littles all the way to the big kids, all over the place, and it's one of the best times of the day. They're not out there for the hour, but the range of kids coming and going, it's kind of fun to see, so they're looking forward to going to the barbecue. Those are my highlights.
Thank you, Katie. That's great.
Thanks, Katie.
It's been fun. I think we're sad to see it end in a couple weeks.
Any questions for Katie? All right. And the last thing that I'll talk about, and I basically have announced this to the staff as well. We do have a supervisory union reorganization that I've been working on for several months. But essentially, in those, we see the organizational chart. We never really laid it out before, but you can see the 3 boards feeding the 1 supervisory union board. And then I report to the supervisory union board. And then my direct reports now, that box where you see Larry Dower's name used to be blank. And there was really nobody coordinating all those functions. And those are important functions. They are the operational functions of our supervisory union, and in terms of coordination and communication and efficiency, I've just been feeling for a long time that they needed better coordination. And so within the organization, without having to do a new hire, we looked around and both academically, and also just in terms of personal performance and past performance, Larry Dower quickly rose to the top. So Larry is now going to direct those departments that are those operational departments. Katie still has the Director of Student Support Services. Angie will remain with Director of Curriculum and Instruction. And then those, including the building principals, will be direct reports to me. It's going to allow me a little bit more time to do what I feel I'm qualified to do. My doctorate is in curriculum and instruction, supervision and evaluation. It's an EDD. I don't have a lot of coursework in business. I don't have a lot of coursework in food service or human resources. I have experience in all those areas, but I think it's going to be really important for me to spend time, especially in this ESSA world and in the recovery world and in all the things we've been planning with those direct reports. So as everyone knows, Larry has built a premier IT program, probably the best in the state. And I think he'll do a great job organizing and working with the operational folks. It did mean that we had to look in the IT department and see who might be able to provide some additional leadership there. Larry will still be spending time with them, but Larry and I together identified Mike Walker, who's been around for a while now, and has the background, the education, the experience to do that work. So he'll step up as sort of the sort of the IT coordinator or manager, and then, as I said, Larry will be the director of all of those departments. So that's exciting. I'm feeling pretty positive about the administrative team. Certainly had their input in terms of the job description for Larry and what that could look like, but it'll also provide a nice team for Larry, Katie, Angie, and I, along with those building principals. It's going to be a little bit more work for Larry, a few more meetings, but he seems up for the challenge. So I just wanted to announce that. And I think for me, that's about it.
Thank you, David. Does anyone have any questions for David? I'm not seeing any hands. Scott?
Thank you, Amy. I was curious whether the, you mentioned in your update for us, David, does the supervisory union continue to offer IT empowerment to other districts or even other organizations? Is that a growth area potentially?
Yeah, well, Scott, I'm glad you asked that question, because part of what allowed the IT department, freed up a little time in the IT department to make this move is that we are no longer contracting as an IT department with Plainfield. We had decided about a year ago, and we had meetings with them and conversations with them, and they're a pretty big district, and they were taxing a fair amount of time. But we do still contract with Cornish. It's a small school across the river, and they send their high school kids, almost all of them, to us anyway. And the town of Windsor still contracts for an amount. So we are taking in revenues, and quite frankly, that's part of what allowed me to make those changes, because obviously I had to do a little bit with Larry's salary and Mike's salary. So we're going to use that revenue that's been, and actually we've been drawing a lot of revenue out of those contracts, especially when we had Plainfield. I don't know, Larry would know the exact number, but it was, what was the total, Larry, for the last 2 years when we had Plainfield?
It was over 70,000.
Yeah, 75,000. So now we're probably around 45.
39, we just signed a 2-year with
Okay.
both entities. 39 year 1 and 40 year 2.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, Scott, but we also felt that if we were going to keep Plainfield, we were going to have to start looking at additional staffing, because again, Plainfield's about the size of Wethersfield. It's a whole other school, and I think the department did a great job with Plainfield, but we also built their own capacity, and so we were able to pull out of there, and they're going to handle their own stuff now.
Yeah, so that's an ongoing project and potentially one where another client might fit.
Yeah, I think, we've been talking to the other towns about some possibilities. I just think what we're gonna have to watch is if we take on those contracts, we learned this with Plainfield, that, we can't stretch our department too far. So we just have to, in other words, if we were to have another entity that really wanted to take advantage of our IT department, we'd have to really scope out the work and make sure that we didn't have to add to that department in order to pick it up, because, as I said, it was getting pretty taxing with Plainfield. It works perfectly right now with Cornish, which is a very small school.
Okay.
And the town is very independent.
Thank you.
David, what is the effective date?
Yeah, I didn't mention that, right? But the effective date is September 1. First of all, that gives Larry time to work with departments. I didn't show it on the screen, but Larry's got some preliminary work he's got to do before September 1, setting up, one-on-one meetings with folks, getting the team schedule all organized. He's already done a lot of that. But we felt we needed vacations and all that stuff going on in August. Best to start September 1.
Congratulations, Larry.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
well deserved for sure.
Okay, thank you. We are up to item 6, which is items for discussion. And the first item is retreat and or goal setting. Did we decide on a date for the retreat? I have so many different retreat dates
I know, yeah.
in my head.
I think that the good news is that all of the boards, as of the middle of August, will have had their own retreats. Weathersfield had a very successful retreat a couple of weeks ago, and so has Heartland, and so Montesquieu is going to do one in early August. But we have not set one for the SU. I mean, I feel like the supervisory union, we should dedicate either part of a meeting to setting some goals maybe, or looking at, and I think it could be tied to the strategic plan and the data, but also because I report directly to the supervisory union, it sort of sets my goals and my priorities.
Right.
So I don't know how you want to do that. I know in the summer it is so hard. I don't know, it took a while, right, Anne Marie, to get a date that worked for everybody in Weathersfield, and the same thing in Heartland. I don't know. I think it might be just better to use a dedicated meeting to
Right,
maybe to policy and goal setting,
yeah.
rather than a
It is.
separate retreat.
I don't agree. I think we haven't had a board retreat in like two or three years.
Supervisory union.
Yeah.
Board retreat, yeah.
2 years at least.
At least.
It was
Yeah,
when
because
Portrait
we-
of Graduate was
COVID.
introduced.
That's right.
Yeah, we did it. Well, that's right, because we were doing a lot of meeting around Portrait of a Graduate,
It was,
right?
it was when it was when you introduced Portrait of Graduate, so it was like that summer before we
2019.
started it.
Yeah, that was pre-COVID. Of course, COVID interrupted a lot of retreats and in-person stuff, but I certainly could support it if we could find
I just think it deserves more time than just.
then a couple of
meeting.
hours.
Or just take a meeting day and dedicate.
And extend it,
And
you
then,
mean?
no, just have it be a retreat. Because we've often not had a meeting, let's say in August, but instead of doing that, we could have the retreat on our regular meeting day in August.
That's actually what we did in Weathersfield. Our July meeting was.
Was the retreat, yeah. And what we do is we start a little earlier. Yeah, I mean, I think we could use a similar format. It's just, and we could either doodle poll the dates or use the date. What would our August date be?
The fourth Monday of August is August 23rd.
Which is,
Teacher orientation.
teacher orientation is the 30th. So the 23rd would work. We could back that up a little bit. I mean, the other thing about retreats that I think are helpful is to sort of do them in person. I think it's important to be around the table because we've been doing them all in person. There's not much of an agenda. We don't usually get much public at the retreats because it's more introspection and looking at goals for the board.
It's also the only time that we all get to see all of the board members who aren't part of the SU board.
Yeah, because we've done it as a full, we've invited all board members to that time. Anybody online have a comment about that suggestion?
We do have Lighthouse training that day, so that goes until 2:30.
So we could do
So after 2:30, that would involve our principals.
I think we've been starting them around 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Finding,
So 5 o'clock and with food.
and then we could bring, and you know what, I think much like, the summer food program will be over. I bet you too, that much like we did, I bet Craig could help us out with that rather than, that's another whole layer of responsibility with people having to bring food. I bet we could probably work that out and just find a good location. The nice thing is if we did it centrally, we could use, if the inclement weather, we could move into 210, room 210. But if it was nice, we could even, we've got that nice outdoor classroom that we could sit outside if we
Right.
wanted to.
I think that would be nice.
Does anybody have any other thoughts on location? Are we okay with that if we centralize it? I'll talk to Craig. Are there any other details? I mean, the agenda would simply be, I think, you know, policy and goal setting, or strategic plan and goal setting, just something really simple. And then we could all review the strategic plan, the recovery plan, and then just see
And also where we are with the anti-racism
Yes,
and
exactly.
equity work.
Yeah, because by then we would have had our last meeting, we would have consulted with Melissa about the future, and then, yeah, I think that's a great idea. So are we all set then with the 23rd?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll start at 5 p.m. with snacks, food, real live food.
Great. Thank you, David. And thank you, everyone. I also just totally off topic, away from the agenda, but it's really nice to be in this room. with
It is,
people.
it really is.
Oh my gosh.
We're starting to creep back.
Yeah. It's sitting in a little room in my house and sometimes having to move from said room to another room. Yeah.
Don't
This
do
is,
that.
this is very
Dedicated
nice.
space.
Yes, yes.
It's not on the screen, they're not seeing.
No, but with the owls right now, right?
Okay,
See what I'm saying? So should have Lori do it.
send that out.
Yeah, so
Okay.
just cancel it, get out of there.
Okay, yeah, I'm on it.
Owl
Just hit the
assessing.
back button.
Because actually she should,
Yeah, there you go.
that's fine.
I just want to screw up the owl.
No, that's good, I did. Plus it's being,
The owl has its own email.
The owl has its own,
It does.
It does actually.
we may or may not want the owl
So when
out.
the owl enters our house.
That's good. I see Scott as his hand.
Scott?
Thank you, Amy. No, I'm enjoying this from home, but I think it would be fun to be there too someday. Personally, I'm rebounding a little bit from my enthusiasm with the growing news about the virus. So, but that's not why I want the platform right now. If we could just, in our minds, go back to David's schematic of governance in our district, and the 3 boards across the top, and then the SU board underneath that, and then David, the superintendent. Please correct me, Amy, if I have this wrong, but I think that works for David's example, but it's an oversimplification in a complicated governance structure like we have in our supervisory union, because of course there are numerous times when a local board like Heartland, with David's direct help or allyship, has to make hard decisions about employees, for instance. So it just gives that schematic might have given the impression to watchers, listeners, that, for instance, Heartland doesn't do anything without okaying it with the SU board. And that's just not how that works.
Right, that you're right, Scott. It is fairly complicated because while it is the SU board that does the evaluation of our superintendent,
Correct. Right.
our superintendent is vital to the continued success of the administration of our schools.
And Scott, we thought a lot about that when we put that organizational schema together. And originally we had the supervisory union board at the top, and then the 3 boards underneath that with direct lines sort of coming down to me. But that didn't feel right either, because the individual boards don't really report to the supervisory union board, right? I mean, they
Right.
do in a familial sense and in a social sense. I mean, we've gotten away from it. We used to do around the SU and report out, but essentially it looked more like you've got the boards on the top, and then they send representatives to the SU board, and then that's the board that all those direct reports of SU employees report to. So yeah, I think it's complex. And I'll tell you, I've often joked, but I've said every superintendent should get this is my first supervisory union, but I think everybody who's a superintendent should get one shot at being an SU superintendent, because it's an interesting organization schema. And so it's complex. We just tried to simplify it internally.
And,
Well-
it does reflect, because as far as the duties that are assigned, it's the SU that created the job description for our superintendent, more or less. And one of the duties is to make sure that the schools in all the
Yeah, Ron.
various districts are working efficiently and receiving assistance and consultation. And if that wasn't happening, then potentially a school administrator could come to the SU board to let us know.
Right.
But
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. My point is that a school's individuality and it's a school community's word I'm looking for, agency. It has been something that is sometimes there's a feel from some folks in our school community that that's at risk. And I think that schematic just what might lead people to believe that the three districts don't have autonomy, and where there are lots of examples where it's the local district board with the superintendent, even though the superintendent's hired by the SU, but there are moments when the local district board and our superintendent have to do the work. And that's
Good
what
point.
I'm finding out.
Good point, Scott.
Thank you.
thank you. Next on items for discussion, the anti-racism committee update. I believe we
Yeah.
covered that.
No, well, Mark Yimling and I have a question that we wanted to ask. And Mark mentioned it already, but it has to do with, it was specifically, I can't find that thing. How do we, so if you are, transportation will be now under your aegis, right?
Yeah.
So how do you implement a policy that a contracted entity must adhere to? How does one do that?
It'd be no different than the other, I would assume, it would be no different than the other policies that we have. We have other policies on the books.
Yeah, behavior management.
Behavior management, weapons, drug and alcohol policy, we have other policies on the books. And I would treat that policy like any other policy.
It might,
So insofar as it comes up in a situation that we need to investigate, we would treat it like anything else.
So we also want to, yeah, okay.
I think our contract too, like with the bus company, Elizabeth, we can check this, but I think it talks about the contractor has to adhere to the policies of the local
I
district.
would hope
Yeah, that says
the
that.
contract.
Yeah, that's why I
Says
haven't read it in a while, but yeah.
The
Yeah.
staff, the hired staff of that company understands that they have to.
And we
The other-
also, go ahead. I was gonna say, we also have right to we have right to refusal on a driver. If a driver is abdicating one of our policies or ignoring one of our policies, we could call the contractor. We haven't had to do this because they're so cooperative, but we could say, we have had to say, like, for example, this year, we had one driver that didn't want to wear a mask, and we said, not gonna drive for us unless they wear a mask. And that's exactly what happened, so we've got some control there.
Okay, so there isn't so much of a dearth of drivers as to with the I mean, let's be honest. You know, with a shortage of bus drivers,
Right.
it sort of puts the transportation company in a little bit of the catbird seat.
It's a bind, yeah, it is. And that's why we just always hope and pray that the driver in the end will be compliant, and in this case, they were. But I don't know what would happen. Yeah, it's a good point, because there's not a dearth. It's not good right now with bus drivers. They're not out there right now.
And we have several other transportation companies we work with, just as an
Right,
example.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. That we contract with
We have a lot of
Right.
contracted buses that's not our
for
main
special
contract.
education, yeah.
contract.
So that was one point of discussion in our small group, that we really wanted to kind of, you have more experience with this kind of thing, obviously, than any of us do, so. The other question was, we thought it would be a good idea to ask the SU board for input on and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, other members of the small group, including Mark, but what do we do if a school isn't complying? What do we do? Like, we want to have an inclusive learning and not punitive system. And we want to model that in the way that the system is structured. And so, what do we do if a school doesn't comply? Yes.
Colleen,
What kind of, can you guys hear me okay? What kind of non-compliance do you think? Like just not promoting or putting forward education around anti-racism, or?
Not providing a truly safe space for students to be able to talk openly, or, you know, would learning environment for, you know, everybody's going to screw up. But
Right.
if the environment winds up punitive, for example, or if the environment winds up not if there
Worst
is
case scenario kind of stuff.
there kind of stuff.
so I think that would be, it would fall along the same lines as any other policy. Let's say we have, for instance, the anti-bullying policy. And we learn through community that there is a school that has an environment that is not conducive, that people don't feel safe. Then that is when our administrators become involved, and there has to be professional development, like significant. There has to be someone going into the school and talking with the kids. I mean, it would turn into, it would, what's the, kind of a triage, you know, where is the focal point that needs the, oh my gosh,
Sorry, attention.
yeah, thank you, attention, which I'm losing one. It, I would think we would hear it from the community.
Well, I think that was one of the questions is how do we find out? How do we as board members find out about it?
The same way we do when there's a bullying situation, it's reported.
Well, going back to the equity coordinator, if we don't have somebody who's truly an expert and knowledgeable about not just what different things look like and how they can be interpreted by students, but also what to do about them, then we don't really have a way to work all the way through it in a
Right, and that's
the
what
thing.
we need to work on.
So.
It's all very good questions.
I saw Nikki.
Nikki, did you have your hand raised and then Mark?
No, Amy, you answered the same way I was going.
Mark's getting his mic on.
Am I clear to make a statement?
We're good.
One of the things that we came up with in our small group work was, and again, this has to do with the multi-levels that Scott was referring to earlier and how the flow works. One of the things we had talked about was the possibility of establishing a system where the equity coordinator, after having discussions with the superintendent, would then somehow report back to the individual school boards, just as a way of keeping everybody in the loop on what has happened and what exactly procedurally that looks like, whether that would have to be done in executive session to keep things out of public record. But that was as far as when issues arrive. So I'm just throwing that out there. If anybody wants to think about what that would look like for other discussions, we'd always welcome your input. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think you, and I assume when we meet again with Melissa, you'll report out some of this, but I know one of the conversations that superintendents are having around the state now with respect to equity coordinators, and Elizabeth alluded to it, and it's one of the pieces I think we have to sort out in terms of job description, is what is their level of authority, right? One of the workshops that I went to administratively, there was some indication that if the equity coordinator had, was not in the administrative ranks, so they had no authority, then all they would do is have the art of persuasion to sort of get people to comply with a policy or, so I think it's a really important point, I think, and maybe we could even spend a little time, because I think this would be a perfect example at our retreat of how could we craft, those procedures, and that might be one of our goals, to develop a job description and expectations conducive with
When
that
are we
thought.
meeting again as a full, is it
With Melissa?
Yeah,
I think it's the 18th.
18th, yeah.
so that we could, as the subcommittee, or whatever,
Right,
the
task force, right,
task
yeah.
force, we could,
Ask for some
because we
clarification.
have to, we're reporting out.
Right.
And just, reporting what we have discovered, learned, et cetera, and share that with everyone. Then we can draft some topics of what we're going to decide at our retreat.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And Melissa can help us with that. Is there any other or I should say, are there any other updates or comments on the anti-racism work?
I think we're good.
Thank you. And when we meet outside, there are lights under the.
I bring lots of bug spray.
Bring bug spray.
That's
Coils.
right, yeah. Okay, next up, we have items for action.
No, we really don't have any
I don't believe
tonight.
we
No,
have.
no hires, no.
For the retreat, do you want everybody to bring some ideas with them as far as goals go, or like we're just gonna?
I think it'd be a good idea to talk about, to read the strategic plan over beforehand, so we can.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
do. We'll
We're
send
talking
out a
about
version.
our own board goals and also David's goals and how they'll.
Craft and mix, yeah, and integrate.
Then we can actually have a backwards look at the year next year.
I also think we might be prepared, I don't want to put Brittany and Angie on the spot, but we might be prepared as part of our goal to know more specifically some of the reporting that we want to do
Oh, yeah.
quarterly, so we could fold that into a goal.
And we should know more than what the AOE's
Right.
expectations are
Right.
for that, for applying and writing that grant. What's needed.
And so, items for action, it's not this board that is, it's more individual items for action. Number one, between now and our retreat on the 23rd is read the strategic plan
Mhm.
and have questions and how we can follow up and perhaps incorporate pieces of the strategic plan at each of our meetings, so we're reviewing
Right.
it. Because other boards that I'm on, that is a set item.
Right.
Is review the strategic plan, and it'll be just one section each time, and we can
Right.
see what the goal was for the year and where we are in
Right.
And
getting there.
I think it would be, just for the sake of discussion, it would be a good idea to ask Nikki, if you still have it, to send out your PowerPoint presentation on how we got to the strategic plan from Portrait of a Graduate. Do you still have that? I have it, and I'd be glad to send it if you don't.
Yeah, if you have it easier than I have it, I think it's on my other computer. So.
Our recent school board candidates, so that they can see how all that stuff works together.
Yeah.
So I'd be glad to share that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
And then if Angie and I have the documents that we want to, we could do one, email, that indicates here are the documents to pay attention to as we prepare.
Great, yeah, that'd be great.
So should I just send that PowerPoint to you two?
That might be a good idea. Send it to Angie and I, and then we'll figure out a way to get that out to everybody.
The strategic plan is also on the curriculum website.
Yep.
Right.
So.
I did just find it.
Nikki, were you still going to send us procedures for the anti-racism policy, or did you decide not to do that?
No, I did. Did
By email?
Um,
Okay. The chat, sorry.
Okay, so I think the board members got them. I wasn't allowed to send to the principals or the SU admin. So I forwarded another email, which hopefully you got.
That's good. I was looking in the chat, so that's my mistake.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Nikki. There they are, yeah.
That works.
Okay, excellent.
We do need a quick executive session tonight too, just.
Okay. Okay, so setting our next agenda, we have our individual items for action. And it will be our retreat starting at 5 o'clock. And we will discuss the strategic plan, where we are and how we can review that on a regular basis at our meetings, and looking at policies as part of our our board calendar, so that we know what to anticipate as far as just regular items. And we will also be talking about our anti-racism, all the work that we're doing, and what we have decided after our last committee meeting on the 18th.
And are we all in agreement that we want to encourage as much as possible people to be in person? That, I mean, one way to do that is to not have a virtual option, but it's up to everybody how we want to handle that. For the retreat I'm talking about, I just think it might be better with.
It would be nice to have everybody in person.
Yeah,
If anybody's really against it,
yeah, we
I'm
could
for it,
provide.
I don't know if anybody's really against it.
And do our very best to have it outside.
Yeah,
so
if we
that,
can, that would be nice.
And
There
extend it
won't
to,
be,
You could set that up.
are we gonna extend it to
The back
all
area,
board
behind the
members?
theater.
yeah, I think so.
That area.
That'd be nice.
Extended to all board members,
We'll talk to Jen.
and
We'll keep an eye on the weather, but that'll be our goal,
right,
to
there's
do it outside.
there's the weather, and there's also the Delta variant. I mean, we still have to be mindful of that,
Yeah, we do.
but
We just looked at the Vermont, I just today looked at the Vermont Health Department's website, and they still have no additional,
Information.
guidelines. So
Okay.
yeah,
they
yeah,
can change
it's
tomorrow
still,
with the press conference.
yeah, they're
About it.
just providing information on how many new cases, and that's.
Those press conferences are dangerous, because that's where we get, I mean, they're great, but that's where you get your information.
Yep.
We've been waiting for some direction. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, so, Colleen.
Thank you. I joined a little late and was wondering if you had talked any about COVID at the beginning of the meeting. It does sound like things are going to change. I'm expecting that there might be some changes, but
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we have to just be aware, be ready. I think the last year and a half, we've become quite nimble.
we can change quickly if we have to. Yeah, but we're waiting, we are waiting, as I said in my email, we are told we're gonna get some very specific guidelines from the AOE, but I bet they're waiting to see how strict they wanna make those.
oh
Right.
yeah.
What we hope we don't do is get those like the day before school starts. I mean, that's not gonna be helpful, and we've made that clear to the agency, that we need to know at least a couple. We're nimble, but there's a limit to the
Yeah,
nimbleness,
there's
right?
a
Yeah.
limit to
So
our
we,
nimbleness without
we hope.
Community can take.
Yeah.
tears, yeah.
Yeah, what do you think is the possibility? I would guess that we're expecting to see we'll end up in masks at the start of the year, and then how much distance between kids will be a question. Would be the big question, maybe. Anyway, I'm not opening up the conversation necessarily, just realizing that I'm actually in Missouri right now, and it's hot over here. It's hot, and the topic of conversation is hot.
It is.
Having mandated masks here, so things are changing a little.
But the guidelines they'll include things like, yeah, both adult staff. You know, we also have the sports programs, which are gonna kick off in a couple of weeks.
Right.
So that's why we need the guidance.
sports.
yesterday.
Yeah. All right.
Colleen. So unless there are any other items for our retreat, I will take a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so Elizabeth and Nikki. All those in favor of going into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
I'm gonna stop recording. Did you take the nays yet?
Well, I would guess they would,
That sounds like everybody.
yes.